But that's what's kind of special about the band too, is that because it is such a big band, we can put on a really dynamic show. And with her, like especially on the "I Am the Moon" album, I do hear. I mean, because you said the thing about her not always like.
Hey, hello everybody. Here today with special guest Gabe Dixon, keyboardist. You probably know him from the Tedeschi Trucks Band. Gabe, good to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So, where are you right now? You at home?
Yeah, I'm at home in Nashville, out on the west side, enjoying some downtime, which it's never really downtime, but at least I'm off the road for a minute and get to hang out with the family and, fix some stuff around the house.
Yeah. So you've been putting out some pretty cool releases recently, which are solo piano versions of some classic songs, or so that I consider classic, that I know of. So done songs by Beck, John Hyatt, Have a Little Faith in Me, Cyndi
Yeah.
Lauper, Time After Time. And
Yeah.
you put out versions that are both vocal and piano, all of it just featuring you and a piano musically. Tell me a little bit about how that started and how you're enjoying it.
I've started to take the approach that I just want to release as much music as I can. Um, Even if it's not in album format, even if it's not a song I sing that I write, I just feel like I'm here to put out music into the world, and even if it's just instrumental. A lot of times, especially if I'm on the road, I have these days where I'm in the hotel room and I've got some time, so I figure why not just get my keyboard out and like try to create something, and instead of just like playing it for myself, might as well put it out into the world. So I just think that's sort of the world that we live in now, where I'd rather release just a little song that I feel like recording more often rather than building up this whole thing and sending it out all at once.
I wonder if, as a songwriter, getting deep into these compositions like Time After Time and Have a Little Faith in Me is inspirational or makes you think about songwriting differently at all. And also, as part of that, by doing it instrumental and vocal, if that emphasizes that as well, because like listening to the instrumental version of Have a Little Faith in Me, it's striking to me how powerful the melody is and how his vocal melody creates something that is almost like an instrumental track or a solo. Because I think when people think of John Hyatt as a great songwriter, which almost everyone acknowledges he is, you think about lyrics and not necessarily the strength of the actual melody.
Yeah,
In the same sort of sense of almost like the standards, Hoagie Carmichael, Irving Berlin, the
for
Mac.
sure.
Do you know what I'm getting at? And it struck
I do.
me, yeah, listening to you on the piano version, that comes through because you're literally only listening to the melody.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that definitely dictates what I choose to record, like which covers is, how good is the melody? Because sometimes I don't even do a vocal version. I'll just do an instrumental, like the Time After Time thing. And so it's nice. I grew up playing piano. I majored in classical keyboard performance in college, and so like expressing myself through piano is sort of it's this part of me that's been untapped for a while since I stopped playing as much of that music. So yeah, I don't know. I think that you can bring out certain things when you do an instrumental version of the song that you can't necessarily with the vocal version. Um, and you can highlight how beautiful the melody is. And like anything I play or sing, I think anything any musician plays or sings at any point, it's going to come out in their songwriting and in their playing at some point in the future. Just when you get it in your musical self, I think it's going to come back out, if you really live with it. Like, I never have done a cover of. Actually, you know what? I used to do "Have a Little Faith in Me" with the original Gabe Dixon band. We would do that live. So that, and I remember seeing John Hyatt around Nashville growing up, and just thinking of him as just this giant of kind of elder songwriter, artist kind of guy. So, I just think that if it's in you, it's going to come out, and so probably you'll hear me play something related to some of those melodies, in a solo or in a future song that I release. So I'm not sure if that's getting at answering your question or not, but
Has John Hyatt heard your versions of the song?
I don't know. I don't know.
We'll have to work on that. I think we can get it to him. I'm going to make some inquiries.
Yeah.
This January and February, you're going to be out doing a whole string of solo shows before the TTB tours start up in earnest again. What can we expect from those shows? Are those going to be solo shows or with a band?
That'll be with my trio, drummer and a bass player, that I've been playing with now since about 2017 or so. Randy Schrager on drums and Dan Asher on bass. We've toured a bunch now at this point. We did a tour last spring, and so I'm glad we get to do two years in a row of, actually, I guess it'll be 3 years in a row of trio touring. I don't know what we're going to do. I mean, I got a new song that's coming out in January, so we'll do that one, and we'll do a bunch of favorites, but probably a couple covers, and we got rehearsals in January, so we're going to put it all together.
I became aware of you and a fan of your Gabe Dixon band 2008, I think it was Bob Lefsetz wrote a really nice column about you. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I remember downloading it on eMusic, which was a service I used, and I bought the album and listened to it a lot. It was in a heavy rotation, and that music holds up really, really well. I wonder, do you still feel like it does? And do you listen to it and feel proud and happy and relate to it being you?
Yeah, people really gravitated to that album a lot. I listened to it so much for so many years that I think I don't need to revisit it anymore necessarily, but whenever I do hear it, if somebody's playing it or whatever, it's kind of like, oh man, the sounds, like the production on it. Me and Jono and Winston, like we had been a band for like almost 10 years at that point, and we've been playing on the road a lot, so we were really tight, and I feel like I brought my best songs to that record, and we recorded it at Blackbird in Nashville. So a lot of things were done well on that. So I'm proud of it. I always will be, and I'll always play the songs. I feel like every show I do now, even I'm doing at least 4 or 5 songs from that record.
So yeah, because I was a fan of that and very aware of you, when you popped up as the keyboard player in TTB, I was delighted and sort of surprised because I thought of it as such a different part of my brain or from my own experience.
It's interesting the connections that happened before I ended up in TTB. It started, I guess, in 2016 when I was out with David Ryan Harris on tour. He and I were doing a solo tour. Just, he'd play by himself and I'd play by myself, like as a duo kind of bill. And at one point, he just said, "Hey, you know what, man? I don't know what it's gonna be, but you got to do some writing or some playing or something with Derek and Susan and that band. I just think you all would get along really well." And I was like, "Wow, that'd be really cool." I've been a fan of Derek since 2001 when I first heard him, when we were both playing at Atlanta Music Midtown Festival, and been a fan of Susan since I saw her at Jones Beach open for the Allman Brothers Band, like in 2002 or something. And so, yeah, whatever, that'd be amazing. And then next year I'm out with my buddy Nick Buda on drums and Ted Pecchio on bass. And Ted was like, "Hey man, you got to meet Derek and Susan. They're really great, And then Oliver Wood was like he was a friend of mine too, and we did a little collaboration, and he was asking me about if I'd ever worked with them in 2018, and I was like, no, but I think that'd be really fun. And I guess when Kofi went into the hospital at the end of 2018, Falcon, the drummer Tyler Greenwell from the Tedeschi Trucks Band, just started calling around people he knew, and I think he called, Ted Pecchio and Oliver Wood, and somebody reached out to David Ryan Harris, and they were all like, "Well, you got to call Gabe, he'd be a great sub for Kofi, you know?
Yeah, so it's interesting because all of those guys, were a connection who knew you, obviously knew your music, and knew those guys well, and they heard it,
Yeah.
independently. It's not like they got together and made a plan, it sounds like, so,
Right.
um and obviously it's worked out really well. You filled in and never left. Was it difficult coming in for Kofi, who was such a beloved figure by the fan base, but also by Susan and Derek, and such an important friend and collaborator with Derek for so many years.
Yeah.
I mean, I've discussed it with Warren and, O'Teal filling in for, I mean, it's a tough and Woody. I mean, it's a tough gig to step into a revered band for a revered member.
Yeah. It was an honor, but it was also intimidating, honestly. It was like, there's no way I'll ever be Kofi Burbridge, you know? So, for me, when I first got there, I imagined, well, this will just be the some of the most fun 2 months I've ever had, till he gets better and I go back to doing what I was doing, and so what I did is basically I spent a solid couple of weeks just working on copying his licks and everything they sent me to work on for the tour that that was happening in January and February of 2019. And I just copped all the parts as best I could, and I did find there was like a nice we have some we had we came from the same place musically in a lot of ways. I mean, his feel is more kind of he has his own kind of rhythmic feel, and he was more into like Herbie Hancock and that sort of thing. But a lot of other things, like, we were definitely I could tell we were listening to a lot of the same stuff, growing up. But, it was kinda like, "Alright, well, I'll pretend that I'm that good in that way for a couple months and just do the best I can," you know? And it was cool, and it was actually a real chemistry, I felt like. Derek was like, "Yeah, this is great. I mean, it's different, but it's really I really like this a lot." I remember in those first rehearsals. So, there was even there was talk. I mean, this tour manager, Skip, he said after Kofi had passed, he was like, "I mean, just so you know, if this makes you feel any better, like, because I know they're big shoes to fill, like, Derek and Sue were asking me about the possibility of adding a 13th member of the band, having Kofi and you play in the band." And I was like, "Really?" So, I don't know. It was kind of one of those things where I felt like, oh, I'm not worthy, but at the same time, it felt natural, and to their credit, they really want all along the way, they've made it clear to me that they want what I do, which is I don't play the flute, but I do sing and write songs. And so they've kind of allowed the band to sort of transform in that way based on the members of the band, which I think is to their credit.
Yeah, I mean, and nobody understands that better than Derek because he was in a very similar situation, but he had just started with the Ulmer Brothers when he was 19 and probably not able to, be as assertive as that developed over years. But yeah, it is. And I've talked about it endlessly with him and with Warren. It's an art to be able to make sure you play signature parts well enough and right on that it feels right, and then not worry, but without at the same time getting bogged down into trying to play everything in that with that same.
Yeah, it is an art. Yeah, I mean, like, the organ part on, like, Midnight in Harlem, I'm gonna try to play that as close as I can to what's on the record, even though Kofi didn't even play it always the same. But I'm like, that's such a signature thing, like, I wanna respect that, but if there's a solo, it's gonna be totally different when I'm playing it, you know?
Right. How much experience did you have with the organ? Because you were more, I had only heard you, I think, play piano prior to joining.
Yeah, I used to play the organ all the time. I bought a Hammond B3 when I was 15, so I was the kid going to the clubs I wasn't even old enough to get into. Like, me and my dad would be hauling my B3 and Leslie in there
Okay, all right.
playing
I didn't know you
playing
had that background.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, you were the
I was
crazy. So your dad was an accomplice to all this. It sounds like.
no Oh, for sure, yeah.
Yeah.
He was very both my parents were very supportive. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, my
Hauling a B3 and a Leslie is next level supportive. That's when the yeah, rubber hits the road.
yeah, well, I couldn't have done it myself, you know? So, yeah, that he was up late nights with me, sometimes on summer break. Well, I was on summer break, so I could sleep in the next day, but, you know, he had to get up early for work the next day, and we'd be getting home after midnight, and so he was a good dad for sure. But I became obsessed with the B3 when I was 15, and listened to a lot of blues stuff, Allman Brothers, Jimmy Smith, BB King, and I mean, Reese Winans was a big hero of mine early on, Stevie Ray Vaughan and all that stuff. And they let me set it up in the living room, so the B3 and Leslie were just right there in my living room when I was 15. I would just play that thing all day, you know?
Wow, that's
Yep.
amazing. Yeah. So, yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. You mentioned that you saw the Allman Brothers in 2002 at Jones Beach, and you just, mentioned that influence with the B3. When you join TTB, you become part of an extended family,
Mhm.
of the Allman Brothers and also, I think through Sue and also through Derek, really part of the lineage of the blues world, and I think it's amazing how she plays that Telecaster with everyone's signature on it, and
Yeah.
it's just it's to me, it's a sign of her devotion to that she carried that guitar around and that she did play with all those guys or interact with them all and have them sign it. I
Yeah.
I don't know if she thinks of it this way intellectually, but to me, it is sort of a statement of putting herself into that lineage while also paying respect that I want their autograph. So, I mean, do you know what I mean? So you
Mhm.
stepped into this thing that's it's part of a real lineage tradition of the blues and the Allman Brothers. Was
Yeah.
Do you feel that? And
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. No, yeah, I love that all that music. I mean, it's kind of funny, man, like, I remember being in high school, I was in, like, a band in high school, and, we would cover, we kinda had some of those influences, but also, like, funk and, we'd improvise and stuff like that. But we would cover One Way Out, and I would sing it, and we would cover Whipping Post, and I would sing it, so it's just kinda funny sometimes, when I'm playing with TTV, and we'll do like we'll do Come and Go Blues, or, or Don't Keep Me Wondering, and I'll sing lead on it, and I'm like, "Man, I've been singing Allman Brothers songs since I since I was in high school, and now I'm singing it."
Right.
And, I'll sing, like, Dreams, and it's like Derek and Warren are playing, and it's like, "This is a trip, man," because I do have such a deep respect and love for that music. Um, I only got to play with
Uh,
Greg one time, but I've always loved it, for sure. And when I was 15, 16, I joined another band that we were just basically a blues band, you know, and we would play Freddie King and Albert King, and Howlin' Wolf, and all kinds of stuff. We'd be playing on Jefferson Street and in Nashville, and playing all over town. Um, and that quickly became my obsession, was blues music, and kind of roots blues rock music, So to be in a band that's kind of doing it better than anybody else is a real privilege and joy to me, So
you mentioned how, you what you bring to the table in addition to the music is songwriting and singing. And on I Am the Moon, you wrote or co-wrote, I mean, a good chunk of the song. I was gonna say a third or a half. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's a lot of songs. So was that I mean, how did that come about? Like, did they say right away, bring us songs, or did you just start collaborating together on the collaborative stuff, or what's the word?
I think I I just started writing songs. We decided we decided we needed material, and we were just kind of sitting around for a few months in 2020, like, well, I guess this stuff's not really going to open back up anytime soon, so we need to start creating some music. So if you got any song, Derek and Sue and Mike were just like, we we'll take all the songs you got, like, if you feel inspired. So, I mean, the only one I wrote by myself was I Am the Moon, and, that that one I just did a demo of because our idea we had a concept which helped, you know? Mike came up with this great concept to write to the, Layla and Majnun story and kinda to write these songs from Layla's perspective, you know, as opposed to the dude's perspective. So, I thought, well, and I read the epic poem, Layla and Majnun. I read the whole thing through all its, dense, like, language. I figured out what was going on, and there was just one part where Layla was just kinda by herself in her castle or whatever, and she was just kind of thinking about Majnun and, said, "I'm the moon," and I was like, "This is it. This is Layla. I gotta write a song with this from this point of view, from this scene," you know? And then we got together at the farm in Georgia where Derek and Susan have a farm down there, brought in parts of songs, we brought in half songs, we brought in whole songs. Mike brought in a bunch of already finished demos, and we just started picking out what we liked and finishing up things that were started, and it just was very organic. And by the end of it, we had like 26, 24 songs, and we were like, well, we couldn't cut. We were like, we can't figure out what to cut. So we just recorded them all, and we were like, well, maybe we'll cut some later, once we get the recordings, we'll really know what's the cream of the crop. And by the end, it was just like, let's just release them all. So we put out four albums.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you wrote the title track basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you from the beginning, was that a duet with you and Sue, or how did that work out?
I imagined it just being a song she would sing, because it was from a female perspective, like, and but I think she just really liked the way I sang the first couple verses, so she was like, "You just keep singing the first one, and I'll sing the second." And, I didn't really question it. I was like, "If Sue Tedeschi wants me to sing, I'll sing."
Yeah. How okay, so being on stage with them every night, you obviously knew them musically before, as we discussed. Have you come to a deeper appreciation of her singing and his guitar playing? Because sometimes there are things where when you see it night in and night out, you start to
Yeah,
appreciate
I
the
mean,
depth and the levels.
I had a pretty strong appreciation going in, so, you know, I I just I think Susan just has that kind of voice that it's just like it's so powerful. Like she's able, both of them are just able to hit that like sixth gear sometimes. That's just kind of mind blowing. Like when I think Derek has got to the peak of his solo, then he'll like go more and like just take it to another to a level that I didn't think he could. And that's really inspiring. And Sue's the same way, like, when she just gets to shouting and doing her thing, like, it's there's an urgency, and just a intensity there that is contagious, for me. And honestly, like, Sue blows me away with her guitar playing, like, she brings the house down, more
Yeah.
than he does a lot of times,
Yeah.
you know, as
Well,
far as the crowd response,
I think her guitar playing, well, all three, her guitar playing and singing and his guitar playing, are also the mastery of it, I think, is so entwined with dynamics.
Yeah.
And they both can really build, and she does it with her singing too. She's not belting it all the time. Obviously, that's always there, and
Yeah.
maybe holding it in reserve sometimes. And she does it with her solos. I think she builds them so well because I think she spent. I know some of her favorite guitar players are some of my favorites, like Ronnie Earl and Jimmy Vaughn,
Yeah.
British Rush, who are all people who Wayne Bennett, from Bobby Bland. They're all people who were so good at building, building, building,
Yeah.
and pulling things up and down, and then, and I think, yeah, I think she reflects that in her playing and her voice. But
That's what's kinda special about the band too, is that because it is such a big band, we can put on a really dynamic show. And with her, like, especially on the I Am the Moon album, I do hear I mean, because you said the thing about her not always like blowing the roof off the place. Like she can go to a really tender place with her voice too. And there were a few songs where I was like, I hope I can tap into that some because like Sue, she's a really open-hearted, warm person. And like that nice, it's nice to get to that vulnerable place with her voice sometimes too, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I listen, one of my favorite songs, they did pre-TTB when she would sing on his albums is Back Where It Started. And I remember interviewing Derek at that time, and he said, "Well, this is one of the advantages of it being my wife, Sue being my wife, and having a studio at home. He had said he had a very distinct sound he wanted, which was her voice first thing in the morning. And so he literally like ran out and recorded that right after she woke up, like by design, which is, and it's such a tender
Whatever it
song.
takes.
Yeah, yeah. But it is having the joint leaders of the band. Does that create ever any difficulty as a backing musician? Because usually it's very clear who you're supposed to be,
Yeah.
following, sort of.
No, I mean, not really, to be honest. Like, I wasn't sure at first, like, but their dynamic is pretty clear. I mean, Derek, for the most part, is the musical director of the band, and Susan has opinions, and but a lot of that stuff they kind of work out between themselves. Um, um, and yeah, there's just the dynamic is pretty clear, I think.
Just
That
follow the headstock.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of times I'll ask Sue something and she'll be like, "Yeah, I think this. I don't know. I should ask Derek." You know,
Yeah.
so like they have a dynamic that works. But obviously, she has a lot of she has opinions and that sort of thing. But for with the musical direction, it's usually him that we're looking to.
I didn't realize until I was looking around before we spoke to you, you had done some recording and with Paul McCartney. And then he played at the concert for New York with him, which was I'm gonna
Yeah.
go back and watch that now.
Oh yeah.
Um, could you talk about that a little bit? How did it happen, and what was that experience like?
When I was 22 years old, I graduated from college in Miami and I had a band, the Gabe Dixon Band, and we moved up to New York City, which is what we had planned to do after graduating to just play and try to make it or whatever. So we moved up there, and we got signed to Warner Brothers Records within a few months, and our producer David Kahn, who was the head of A&R there, and he was producing Paul McCartney's album the month after he produced our album. So he invited me to play on the Paul record because he liked my playing and singing and everything. And so I played on the Paul McCartney Driving Rain album that came out. This was like 2001 that we were recording. We hung out for 6 weeks in a studio with Paul McCartney making a record. It was unbelievable. My hero. And a few months later, 9/11 happened, and I was living in New York. It was very, very traumatic for everybody. And Paul decided he wanted to do something to help out the firefighters' families and raise everybody's morale and stand up and celebrate our freedom as Americans, And so he put this concert together with a whole bunch of guests, and I was in the band at that time, so I was the keyboard player. And we did that concert in, was it October or November of that year, maybe? It was amazing. Amazing experience. It was beautiful.
He asked you to do a world tour, and you turned him down, right?
Well, yeah, he asked if I had a record deal with the Gabe Dixon Band, and a couple years of they were gonna like pay us tour support and stipend to be on tour and go tour around with my band. And I love Paul, but that would have been hard for me to walk away from, just because that's just what I love to do. It was a unique situation. I wish I could have done both.
But
Yeah,
what a great thing to happen early in your career, though, to have just to spend the time in the studio with him must have been fascinating.
it was amazing. I mean, I was like singing. He's like, "Here's what we used to do in the Beatles," like when we sing background vocals on a track, we'd stand, so that we were eye to eye, one side of the mic, and then I'd be on the other side. And so I'm like staring into Paul's eyes, like singing harmonies, on this record. And it's just, I was pinching myself a lot. He's amazing, amazing musician, amazing person, amazing player. It was a privilege, and I'll always be grateful for that.
Have you utilized any of that, things that you learned from being in the studio with him over the rest of
Yeah, it's just this simplicity, and like he had a real lightness about him, and a willingness to just try things, even if they seemed crazy, like he just, it was just, it all felt simple. Sometimes you'd have a very strong idea about what part needed to happen here, but usually he was just very open to trying things. And I don't know, he's very in touch with his creative voice, when he would sing. Like I remember one point he was doing a bunch of guitar, he took a guitar solo on one of the songs, and he just kept playing the section over and over and over. And he didn't have any, like, he wasn't like I was like fresh out of music school. So I'm like, anything you hear up here, you should be able to translate into your playing, right? Yeah. But he was just had a very free, like, what if I do this? Like, how's that sound? Oh, all right, let's try again. And just openness. There was like an openness to inspiration it was like a pretty nice free channel. And that was inspiring to me,
Yeah.
and just, yeah, I don't know, not taking things too seriously when you're being creative. I appreciated that.
Yeah, that must have been like, there's a BB King song, "You Better Not Look Down If You Want to Keep on Flying." And that whenever I've found myself in a situation remotely like that, which I've never been in the studio with Paul McCartney, but I've had some great thing, and I realized if I start thinking about it, it's all gonna fall apart. I'm gonna get too self-conscious.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
just keep flying, man. Keep
Uh,
your eyes in front of you. And
oh man, yeah, definitely that worked out that muscle for a long time. Last month playing at the Hall of Fame induction, that was crazy because I've started all three songs on piano, and
Yeah, and Feeling All Right has a very distinct piano part.
yeah,
Uh,
and people gonna know if I mess it up. So
yeah.
I had to like put all those nerves and worst case scenarios out of my mind. Just you know what to do, man.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if Elton John's in the front row or Jim Carrey. Like, all you got to shut all that out and just enjoy yourself and do what you love. And it was cool.
Well, because ultimately the music is the music.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, and then I guess that's playing with people like Derek and Sue. Those kind of opportunities suddenly become available, and you find yourself doing those kinds of things.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's kind of insane. All the people they know and the rooms we end up, the people I get to play with because of them. And yeah, I'm just along for the ride. It feels like sometimes, and I
Um,
enjoy it.
are you guys working on new material now?
Yeah, we finished a record. It's coming out next year.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
That's
um,
exciting.
but as far as, yeah, so that I'm calling that new material because it's not out yet.
Yeah, that counts. Well, Gabe, thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you on the road in January and February. How can people who want to catch up with you find you on the road, hear some of this new music? What's the best way for
I
people
mean,
to
GabeDixon.com, or you can find me on social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and I just I have a new song coming out May the 23rd. It's the first time I've released like a brand new song that I sing in a while, on January 23rd. And then we're hitting the road. I think the first show is maybe the 26th or 27th. We're doing all Northeast stuff this year.
Yeah,
So
I know in February, I think 10th and 11th, you'll be at New York City Winery, and
yeah,
I'll be in touch, and I'll be at one of those shows. And
yeah, let me know, man.
yeah,
Uh,
look forward to it. It's always a pleasure to see you. Like I said, I've been enjoying your music since long before you were in TTB, and happy to see your success, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks for having me, man.